Kansas City Chiefs season could be on the line in Week 12 against the Indianapolis Colts, and Shedeur Sanders makes his first NFL start for the Cleveland Browns against the Las Vegas Raiders. The Ultimate NFL Pregame Show starts right now.
It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Every team, every game, every angle. The local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network going head-to-head on every matchup. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Unprecedented insight, unrivaled passion, and unsurpassed knowledge. It's the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. The Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Week 12 in the NFL is officially here. And we've got everything you need to know heading into the weekend from the local experts across the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher. I'm the host of Locked On Ravens and one of the many NFL experts here on our network. And from the prime time game of the Buccaneers and the Rams, to the big 4 o'clock window matchup between the Browns and the Raiders, where Shedeur Sanders will make his first NFL start, to why that Chiefs and Colts game in that 1 o'clock window is going to have massive implications in the AFC. We're going to go game by game to make you the most informed fan for game day with the help of our local experts. So let's start with a look at the 1 p.m. Eastern slate of games. And kicking us off will be that Colts and Chiefs matchup. The Chiefs coming off a tough loss to the Denver Broncos in week number 11. Meanwhile, you have the Colts that are surging and having a great season, but they're going to need to keep their momentum going. So Jake Arthur of Locked On Colts and Chris Clark and Ryan Tracy of Locked On Chiefs talk about which team will come out on top and more.
All right, here's the fun part of this show. We get into the keys to the victory for both teams. Ryan, I'm going to start with you on this one. What do you think the keys are for the Chiefs to win this game?
The number one thing the Chiefs have to do is keep their minds about them. And it's not the guys on the field. This is up to the coaching staff. The number one thing they have to do is come out prepared. Can't let younger guys, and there are a number of them that are contributing to this roster right now, can't let them be panicked. You can let the older guys start to get a little bit nervous, right? You have to stay focused. Much like we were talking about earlier about the way that the Colts are approaching this, you have to do that as well. You have one opponent left for this season. It is the Colts. Nothing else matters. You got to come out and you got to be surgical with your offense, and you have to make sure that you're physical on defense, the two things that have not been working out very well for these Chiefs the last few weeks, really, since they faced Buffalo. So for me, it's about the preparation by the coaching staff and the game planning that they have a way out if what they want to do doesn't work. If maybe it is Jalen that does something to mess up the process. If sauce is just too much all over somebody that you can't effectively do what your main goal is, you have to be able to pivot. And that has to include the run game. And that's about the planning. The Chiefs have gotten away from the run far too much this season, more so than even most seasons. And I think that is all in the preparation. Today, as we're speaking, tomorrow, Friday, I think it's more about those days than it is necessarily about execution on Sunday.
When it comes to the Colts, like 8-2, they're obviously having a very good season. And I don't want to discredit anything that any other teams have done. But the common denominator in their losses, they've really only had one ugly performance in all of their losses and everything. But it's turnovers. They've had a big problem with allowing sacks the last couple games as well. 12 sacks between the Steelers and the Falcons. A lot. And then like Daniel Jones had like 7 turnovers by himself in those 2 games as well. So it's not realistic, especially with I know Kansas City's defense isn't really what you guys want it to be right now. But I don't want to discredit Steve Spagnuolo. Like he'll have something ready, I'm sure. And I mean, that's on tape for the Colts. Like, you're bringing a ton of pressure at Daniel Jones. He's giving you the ball. Like, that's out there. And they just had their bye week, but there's not going to be any quick magic fix for that. So I think it's more about how you counter the pressure that pretty much every defense is going to bring at you now, because they've seen that that's the way you beat the Colts, is cause them to cough the ball up. And I mean, like Pittsburgh, for example, like I mentioned earlier, their defense just magically flipped a switch, but the Colts allowed them, 24 of the Steelers' 27 points were off turnovers. The defense shut the offense down. So like the turnovers were a direct result or a direct, that's why they lost. And then really just kind of dumb penalties as well. That's just been the common denominator, like coughing the ball up like crazy, because it's not like they just turn it over once or twice. It's like an insane amount. It's like at minimum 3 turnovers if they're going to have a bad day. It's raining. And then again, like you look at the Rams, they coughed it up a few times. A.D. Mitchell had a game that got him in the doghouse and then ultimately traded. Like, if they stay out of their own way, like, mistakes are going to happen. That's fine. It happens in every game. You're even going to maybe turn the ball over in a lot of games, take some sacks. But, like, you just can't let it roll into an entire systemic thing throughout the entire game. You know, like, bounce back from it. And I thought that's something that Daniel Jones did well. Like, he had a couple more turnovers against the Falcons. But when it came down to crunch time in the fourth quarter and overtime, he made some elite throws. And like Jonathan Taylor went absolutely bonkers, over almost 300 yards of offense. Of course, it feels crazy that I'm only just now mentioning his name. But like, he's a given. Like, he's going to do what he does every week. It's about everything else around him not crumbling and, you know, doing their part that leads to the Colts victory. So yeah, as long as, you know, when pressure does get to Jones, he holds on to the ball and he's not having some arm punts and stuff, like, they'll be fine. Just be a little disciplined, because being on the road hasn't been their safe space this year, obviously. And then just not letting things snowball into catastrophe, basically.
I chuckled as you were talking because you talked about dumb penalties, and I'm sitting here looking at the Chiefs going, I don't know how else to really talk about it. Like, it's dumb penalties. It's special teams miscues. It's not lining up on the line of scrimmage. It's, you know, and I'm okay with a hold here every now and then. I mean, you're gonna have those. It happens. I mean, you could probably call holding on just about every single play. So it's just a matter of what ref you get and what they see. So I'm not going to be upset about that type of stuff, but it's the dumb stuff. It's the illegal procedures. It's the offsides. It's all those kinds of dumb things that the Chiefs have done. If they can get away from that and play a clean game, their chances of winning this game go way up. And you talk about forcing Daniel Jones into turnovers. This defense hasn't been doing that. They haven't been forcing turnovers this year. So if they can get to a point where they're pressuring him and he starts turning the ball over, then you get yourself in a situation where the Chiefs have a short field, and I feel like you have to feel pretty good about Patrick Mahomes being able to put points on the board, even going against Lou Anarumo in this defense. So to me, it's a matter of taking care of the ball, and Mahomes has done pretty well this past week, withstanding it with 2 horrible throws, one that turned into an actual pick. But he's done pretty well this season, keeping control of the ball and not turning it over. So as long as Kansas City can do that, I think that they're going to be in good shape. But the other one is, you know, this Colts offense, they've been scoring a ton of points. And as you said, Jonathan Taylor has been a big reason why. It's a question of, can you keep him under 120 or 130 yards? Because if you can do that, and I'm okay even if he gets closer to 150, but if you get him, if he goes off for more than that, you're going to be in a situation where their Colts are likely going to hold on to the ball. Maybe I wouldn't say quite 2-1, but it's, 35, 40 minutes, and you're losing the time of possession, and that's going to cost Kansas City because they're not a quick strike unit right now. They just can't score points quickly and get themselves to a victory in this one. And so I think, keep control of the ball, no more dumb penalties, and slow Jonathan Taylor down just a little bit, and I think Kansas City has a chance to win this one.
I think one more interesting area to look at is, you mentioned Kingsley's his concussion and everything. The Colts are obviously without DeForest Buckner right now. He's on IR with a neck injury. They hope he gets back, before the season's up, but he's without a doubt out of this game. It wasn't the end of the world. Like, there were times where you could clearly tell he was missed against Atlanta. It's the only game they play without him so far. But this one, if any team can get to establish the run and commit to it throughout a game, especially now without DeForest Buckner, that might be the key to it all. And it sounds like that is way easier said than done for you guys, and it's not even really being attempted. So
Matt Nagy, are you listening?
Right. I almost, it feels like a thing where this is the week where the Chiefs are like, we've been saving it for this. And again, their backs against the wall. But with their backs against the wall like this, like, do they really want to go conservative and go with a run approach? Probably not. But that's something I'm looking for with the Chiefs. Like, do either of these Tigers on either side with the Colts or Chiefs change their stripes? With the Chiefs, again, their backs up against the wall, but the Colts are coming out of a bye. They've had some really ugly performances. They split the last 2 games 1-1, but both performances left a lot to be desired. So if either of these teams really make any like big changes going into this game,
it feels like overall this could be a season swing for both teams on the outcome of this. Either solidify yourself if you're the Colts up at the top, then you got to start asking questions, right? For the Chiefs, one side of the coin is that, oh, yeah, we can still pull this off against a top competition, or, oh, maybe we really aren't prepared to go to the postseason. Like, it seems both teams are going to get some answers when this one's over.
Check out Jake over at Locked On Colts. Check out Ryan and Chris over at Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, a big NFC North battle, the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. The Vikings struggling a little bit after losing to the Chicago Bears and the Baltimore Ravens in back-to-back weeks. Meanwhile, the Packers, they're going to look to pick up a big victory of their own in this one and defeat their NFC North rival. So Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings and Peter Bukowski of Locked On Packers talk about keys to victory and so much more.
We're back here on a Locked On Packers, Locked On Vikings crossover Thursday. And Luke, I want to start this conversation here because I meant to bring it up in the last segment. The Packers defense is the number 1 defense in not allowing plays of over 10 yards. They're the number 1 defense in not allowing plays of over 20 yards. You mentioned the ADOT stat. Like this is a team that wants to hunt some big plays. That is my key to victory. If the Packers do not allow the Vikings to create explosive plays, I think they will win. And defensively, this is the best defense in the league at not allowing explosive plays. So they are set up in that way to win this game.
It makes it a bit of an inflection point, I think, for the Vikings, because the Vikings cannot help themselves but call another double move on 3rd and 2. Like Kevin O'Connell needs to be stopped, but it's not just O'Connell. He will call that, but he'll have something underneath, an outlet or even a backside concept that's a little more, reasonable if the front side double move thing doesn't play. And then McCarthy will just greet it. He has played an incredibly greedy brand of ball.
9. That's 9. Not McCarthy.
Yeah, that's 9. Oh my God. Look, man, you know as well as I do. Sometimes the QB's weird. All right. Sometimes the QB's
you
weird.
You are preaching to the choir on that.
Yeah,
my
you
friend.
guys know what it's like. All right?
Yeah.
But
call me when he's taking trips to Peru to do ayahuasca.
Not yet. They cannot meet. Those two cannot meet. Because
they were almost in the same quarterback room, Luke. They were making googly eyes at Aaron Rodgers in the offseason.
They can that was honestly the biggest fear to me, was like, you cannot learn what's on Aaron Rodgers' phone. Nobody share the Signal group chats.
No one should see that.
So this to me is a moment where, like, if not now, that you decide to take what the defense gives you and, try to just get a normal completion percentage. We're having we're hovering around 50% completion because we're going for the shot all the time.
Yeah.
If ever there is a time to just take the completion, I'm not talking turn into a slant flat screen, Bo Nix offense. I'm talking about just take what is there, take your completion, move on. Don't be greedy. This needs to be the time. And if this is the time, then they can maybe try to move the ball and start to make this a spicy game on the road. But they have to be responsible, and they have to kind of curb their worst instincts, and they haven't been able to do that.
Yeah, JJ has to leave 9 in Minneapolis and just bring JJ McCarthy, because the way the teams have played the Packers, and this is the biggest fear, and the reason that they have quote unquote played down to their opponents is because what teams have realized, and this started really with Cleveland, is if you possess the ball and you make this a 7-possession and 8-possession game, you mentioned the Ravens and their bozo energy. The Packers have some bozo energy too. And part of that is Jordan Love, but part of that is they're a young team. Part of that is Matt LaFleur sometimes can't help himself.
Yeah, drops can turn into picks.
And look, Jordan Love only has 3 interceptions this year. The turnover-worthy play rates reflect that. He's been better than the narrative around him in terms of the turnover-worthy plays. It's just that the turnover-worthy plays are so loud and so dumb and so bad that you're just like,
Right.
How does he like, you know, like
the one against Carolina is coming to mind. Yeah.
Yes.
The 4th and 8.
Do you have a friend that you know is like an intelligent person, but sometimes they do things and you're just sort of like, how do you make it through a day?
I know a lot of people like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, that's kind of Jordan Love playing quarterback. It's like, you're a really good quarterback. How does this happen? Why, like, how can you possibly make this bad a mistake? Just don't do the dumbest thing you've ever seen once every 2 weeks. And,
hope you enjoyed the play, Mrs. Lincoln.
Right. But like, he'll do it once. It's not Jameis Winston where he's like the meme where it's like, I'll effing do it again. Like that.
Yeah.
Like he's luckily not that.
But if you lose that mentality, then you kind of lose what makes him though. That's the deal.
This is the thing, is you kind of just have to let him ride the lightning, man. Like that was the fun of Brett Favre. And so again,
that's what we did with Sam Darnold last year, and what Seattle's doing with him now too.
100%. And sometimes you get the bad end of the variance and he throws 4 interceptions on a day where you have 400 yards of offense and can't score because you can't stop turning the ball over. But my point of the playing down of the competition thing is, if this is a 7 or 8 possession game, that's where the Vikings have an opportunity, because what the Giants did was they said, we'll take the 3 yards on first down, and then we'll take the 4 yards on second down, and then we'll convert third down. And we'll do that 3 or 4 times. And now we're in plus territory where we can get a little crazy. We can go for, I think they went 3 or 4 on fourth down, and the Packers will let you move the ball, but you know, they think that they're going to get a turnover. They're going to get a sack. They'll do something, or they'll get a red zone. And by and large, you know, they've been pretty good doing that. They haven't been able to create the turnovers. They're 9th in EPA per play if you exclude turnovers. They're 15th if you include turnovers. They're 28th in the league creating turnovers. They just don't do it enough. And
stoppable force meets movable object. I think that's
and this is the problem, right? So like, if you
Vikings give the ball up like it's,
you let the Vikings matriculate the ball, that's the formula. The problem is the Vikings they're also bozos, and they will give up the ball, or they will on 3rd and 8 or 2nd and 8, they'll make a ridiculous throw. And now it's 3rd and 8, and you're in a tough position against Micah Parsons and Jeff Hafley. So that's the thing, is it's like, can either one of these teams just be normal on that side of the ball? And what's fun is that when the Packers offense is on the field and the Brian Flores defense is on the field, that's going to be cinema all game. Like, it's going to be a great cat and mouse game. LaFleur versus Flores, Jordan Love against his own worst impulses. That's going to be fun. And I did want to throw this out there at you. Jordan Love this year against cover 2 is completing 91% of his passes according to Pro Football Focus.
Yeah.
So it's just like, as long as you have some answers for 0, and I don't like, can the Vikings play the man coverage they played in Minneapolis last year? Like, I feel like they just don't have the horses to do that this year.
They've been doing more of that than you would think. They've also been making like roster changes. They've been making depth chart changes on their secondary. Theo Jackson is functionally benched right now. He's playing like, single digit snaps a game. And they got Fabian Moreau, who they picked up off the waiver wire on cut down day, who's like now turning into an active starter. Yeah, he's playing decent ball. Like, I don't know. But it's Flores, right? So you have to have an answer to 2 and to 0 and to all that, but you have to have a fast answer to those things. Yeah. Because the blitzes are going to come, and they're going to, confuse whoever you got going at center. And I know that O-line has been banged up and shuffled.
Sean Ryan, first-time starter. Yep.
Yeah.
So game starting, but he's not the preferred starter. He's a backup.
Yeah. So they're going to mess with that as well. And that might be the thing of it. But I think we have to talk about turnovers on the other side. The Vikings have not taken care of the ball. McCarthy, of course, taking way too, and he's not, he made a risky throw and got punished. He's just like, you shouldn't throw that, and you throw an interception.
Yeah.
It's different than, some of the Sam Darnold picks last year were like, I see what you were going for. Maybe it was a little tight. You underestimated how fast that safety could break. This one is just like, dude, what are you doing? And you just kind of heaving up an idiot 500 ball getting picked. So you have to not do that. And I just don't trust this team to have that kind of ball security. The Vikings on defense have not generated turnovers the way that I think they've gone on these long droughts of just no turnovers. Outside of the Bengals game, I think they have like 2 turnovers. It's really, really bad. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't have it in front of me, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were lower than the Packers defense generating turnovers. They go for the peanut punch all the time. They tackle high. It sounds like Josh Jacobs is going to be very iffy for if he plays this game.
Yep.
He would be a beneficiary of that because the Vikings love to tackle around the shoulder and go for the ball, and then you can just churn your legs and carry him for
Tucker
8
Kraft would have also
yards.
been the beneficiary of that, but of course he's out for the season.
Yep, and he's out. So that is like this huge they have to find a way to generate turnovers, and they have to find a way to take care of the ball on the other side. They've lost the turnover battle in almost all of their games this year.
Yikes.
And look, man, they're on a 4 of 5 losing streak. They are spiraling, and this is one of the most important reasons why. Turnovers and penalties. It's always turnovers and penalties. They can't win the turnover battle. They can't win the game.
The thing about bad teams is they do bad things, and turnovers and penalties, that's as bad as it gets. Like you're just not going to win games if that's part of your identity. So it sounds like we both think this is going to go a certain type of way. Maybe that should make everyone involved a little bit scared.
Check out Luke over at Locked On Vikings. Check out Peter over at Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Patriots and the Bengals match up next. We're going to dive into that game now. As the Patriots, they're looking good. AFC East leaders, and their chances only got better with the Buffalo Bills' loss to the Texans on Thursday Night Football. Meanwhile, the Bengals, Joe Burrow back at practice, but still a lot of question marks. Jamar Chase going to miss this game after being suspended. So James Rapien of Locked On Bengals and Nick Cattles of Locked On Patriots talk about which team will come out on top.
All right, real quick. The key matchup that really has nothing to do with the Patriots is this Bengals defense and tackling. They cannot tackle. Can they tackle? Will they be able to tackle? It's the Bengals versus tackling, and 109 missed tackles in 10 games, Nick. It is, and those are the ones that count as missed tackles, not the ones that they didn't even get close on because they got shaken out of their boots. I mean, they are so bad at the basics of tackling that I have to mention it and hammer it home because Mason Rudolph was 12 of 16 last week and had all these over 100 passing yards, touchdown, and he threw it within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage almost on every play on all 12 of those completions. And it's catch, run, multiple missed tackles. That would be something certainly that I'd be doing if I was the Patriots, because Drake May might not have to chuck it downfield for the Patriots to put up 40 on Sunday.
I'm glad you brought that up because on Tuesday I tweeted at Nick C Radio. If any Bengals fans want to follow me for no reason, I tweeted yesterday. I watched Cincy Pittsburgh from Sunday. Cincy is one of the worst tackling teams I've ever watched. Borderline embarrassing. Honestly, the way it looked, and I'm not saying this is what it is, but it honestly felt like, especially the defensive backs, felt like they made some business decisions. Felt like they did not even want to be physical at all, and the idea of physicality scared them away. I mean, it was bad. It was bad, and it was, I had, read about the Cincy defense, and I had, obviously watched a little bit here and there, but watching it on film, it's an experience, James. It is an experience.
You're telling me.
I just, and one of my 3 keys is the Patriots tight ends, Hunter Henry, maybe Austin Hooper if he comes back from a concussion. Again, we're recording this before practice on Wednesday, so I'm not sure. I know there's been some word that it could be optimistic about him coming back, but Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, and your running backs, Travion Henderson, if Ramondre Stevenson is back this weekend, getting those guys in matchups against the linebackers and the safeties, because the second and third level tackling is so bad. It should lead to chunk plays. It should. Not only was the tackling just, what it was, but I also thought it looked like there were at least 3 or 4 occasions, and I'm a Notre Dame fan, so, I know my guy Al Golden is there now, but it looked like, there were 3 or 4 occasions where guys just didn't know what they were supposed to be doing, especially the linebackers, just kind of lost in coverage, looking around. And I'm telling you, with that kind of miscommunication, that kind of tackling, Josh McDaniels and Drake May will obviously take advantage of that.
Yeah, they will. Yes, they will. Yes, they will. So we've referenced it a few times. I haven't been to the facility yet. After we record, I'm going to head down there. And Zach Taylor talks a few hours after we're recording this. he's probably not going to say one way or another. They should bench Geno Stone this week.
Oh my
There's
God.
no way. There's no way he should start again. He played every snap the other day.
I wasn't going to bring up his name. I didn't want to put him out
Bench
there in
him.
the crosshairs as bad,
Yeah.
but he was atrocious.
Yeah.
He looked like he didn't want to be out there at times. It was bad.
And after the game, he said, "Yeah, I think we played better."
Oh.
And they only gave up 20 points as a defense, so technically he's right. But when you do what he did in that game, and the definition of business decisions while you're trying to tackle Darnell Washington and you're cowering as you do it, just ridiculous. So, by the way, if you really want a fun watch just the fourth quarter, defense only of that Jets game. That really set the tone for the Bengals season. It gets worse, my friend. It does get worse.
My goodness, man.
No, I think that would be one. Like if I'm doing keys, one, tackle, do the basic things on defense.
Yeah.
If you see the ball carrier, get him down on the ground, hold on to him if he's just untackleable, because apparently that's what happens when you play the Bengals. You just can't tackle with one guy. Fine, hold on to him until other guys can get there. They're going to have to force some turnovers. I think that's because they're not the better team. And when you're not the better team, you're going to have to find an equalizer. And so jumping on them early, getting a pick six, forcing a fumble, doing something like that to get some momentum early would be huge. And then it's going to be producing offensive plays without Jamar Chase. Can someone step up? Who's it going to be? Is it going to be a cast of characters? Will it be the T. Higgins show? It's going to have to be something, but all of those things need to happen if the Bengals are going to be competitive in this one.
As you talked about hanging on to somebody as you waited for somebody to help you to tackle a guy, I'm sorry. I can't shake it. I can't. Since you brought it up, you ruined me during this podcast, because now I just have these visions of what I witnessed, and there were multiple times where Cincy corners were literally hanging on a guy's cleat as he was dragging him.
Yeah. But that's better than what Geno did,
that is true. That is true. So you mentioned turnovers.
A low bar. It's a low bar.
Man. One time he just kind of ran and looked like he was like, I'm going to look like I'm going to try to get into a pile here and make a tackle on the edge, but I'm just going to kind of like, I don't know, rub against the dude with my chest. And
it
was
unbelievable.
indescribable. You talked about taking care of the football, and that's one of my keys. You and I are on the same page. If Drake May can take care of the football, if the Patriots offense doesn't turn it over, Drake May should eat. I mean, he should absolutely eat in this game. And, going against teams like Atlanta, who, not the best team, but a pretty challenging defense, going against Cleveland, not a great team, but a pretty challenging defense, Tampa, pretty challenging defense. It felt like against the Jets, Drake May kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say it's not that he was taking it for granted. I don't want to say put his feet up, but you could definitely tell he could exhale against that Jets defense and go, okay, now I don't have to deal with all these, crazy things going on in front of me right now. I can kind of pick apart these guys. So as long as Drake May doesn't try to force the big play and not turn it over, they should move the ball. And it goes hand in hand. You talk about Cincinnati. My final key is, you talk about Cincinnati. And I do think Cincinnati will have opportunities to move the football. The Patriots defense tends to play a lot of zone coverage that's soft, and they give up a lot underneath. I don't know if they'll do that this week, but they kind of just allow that to happen. But the red zone defense has to be better. The Patriots are the second worst red zone defense in football. More than 70% of the time teams get into the red zone, they score. The last 3 weeks, it's been 75% of the time, which is inexcusable. And I think it could be the fatal flaw for this football team. If they're going to lose, aside from injuries and stuff in the playoffs and all that, and not look like the same team, I think it's going to be their red zone inefficiency. They've been terrible defensively, and they've been middle of the pack offensively. So if Cincy moves the ball, they've got to be much better inside the 20. And the Patriots, if you drive against this Cincy defense, which James, you and I both believe that'll happen on Sunday consistently, if they don't turn the ball over, you've got to finish those drives and get into the end zone.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's huge. I mean, if they get down there, they're going to have to take advantage. They're going to have to score a bunch of points, I think, to be in this one. The Bengals have given up, I think it's up to 8 straight now, 27 points or more in 8 straight. And that's not all defense. There's been some turnovers in there, no doubt. But it's mostly defense, and it's mostly missed tackles. and getting Ramondre Stevenson back. Like this could be like the Ramondre Stevenson game. Last week was the Kenneth Gainwell game. It isn't necessarily the star guy. Sometimes it's the backup, and Jaylen Warren got nicked up, and that's part of it. But still, Gainwell had a touchdown on the Steelers opening drive. So it's
covering him out of the backfield would probably be a good idea. I'm just like if you're
basic stuff. I mean, just leaking out, let's pitch and catch. So yeah, this defense, it definitely doesn't look like Al Golden's Notre Dame defense from last year.
No,
to your point, I don't know how they salvage it, but it's a tough test.
Nick is over at Locked On Patriots. James is over at Locked On Bengals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Steelers and the Bears. The Bears coming off that big win against the Vikings, and the Steelers, they were able to get the job done in Week 11 themselves, beating the Cincinnati Bengals. So both teams need a win. The Bears on top of the NFC North, and the Steelers on top of the AFC North. So a couple of division leaders here. So you have Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers and Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears talking about which team will keep either their AFC or NFC North lead guaranteed.
As we wrap up our crossover Thursday, Locked On Steelers, Locked On Bears podcast, we're going to get into some keys to victory for both teams and maybe some quick predictions on how we think this one is going to go. The Bears are favored by 2.5 points from our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook as we record this right now on Wednesday evening. But Chris, we started talking about a little bit at the end there. I think from a Bears offensive perspective, I think there's the feeling like they can generally like not just do whatever they want, but like do things well enough. Like they've been able to find answers to pretty much anything defenses are throwing at them. And that doesn't mean 35 points. It just means like when they get slowed down over the course of a game, Ben Johnson has been smart enough to find ways to adjust. And even if Caleb Williams is struggling at first, get him into rhythm later, or if the running game is struggling, eventually kind of find a way to grind that out over time. So I think Bears fans have a good confidence that even though there's going to be ups and downs, they're not just going to score at will on the Steelers defense by any means, that they can find some ways to get things done and get their, 21 points at a minimum. It's just then, can your defense hold the other side down far enough? And I think that's why we spent the last segment talking so much about this Bears defense versus the Steelers offense, because that's just been the bigger struggle right now.
Yeah, I look at what the Steelers are up against here, and this is an offense that, we talked about the Bears' defensive metrics that didn't work. This offense has a lot of metrics that works for them. They're top 10 in scoring. They're top 5 in yards. They run the ball well. They're one of the best explosive run teams. They have the second highest explosive run rate in the NFL. That's something the Steelers really have to keep in check. But they're also facing a defense that if you look at a lot of the metrics, the Steelers have switched how they've called defense over the past month or so. After they lost to the Packers, funny enough, but after they lost to the Packers, there was a kind of a realization that like, hey, we came into this year thinking we're going to run a one high safety looks, single man coverage, cover 1, cover 3 spot drop, and that's going to work for us. And it wasn't. Guys were not trusting each other. The corners were living on islands that they didn't trust themselves. And so it just led to catastrophic failures in the structure of the defense. And so going into the Colts game when they were playing the number 1 offense in the NFL at the time, they switched to 2 high safety looks a lot more. And they have held that for 3 straight games. And they've played well in 3 straight games defensively. They basically shut down the Colts. They took away Jonathan Taylor. They kind of made Daniel Jones turn back into the pumpkin for a short bit. And then up against the Chargers, they mostly contained the Chargers. Chargers eventually broke out because the Steelers' offense was just so bad. But then this Bengals team, since Joe Flacco had joined it, they average like 296.5 or something passing yards per game. That would lead the NFL if that was their season-long rate. They've been on fire, and they took it away. They took away Jamar Chase. They took away T. Higgins. That's why Jamar Chase was spitting on Jalen Ramsey, because he couldn't get open, and he was getting tired of them talking to him about it. And so the Steelers are playing a bit differently. They're stopping the run more consistently. They're getting after the quarterback. They're not having to blitz as much to get after the quarterback. And the secondary is passing guys off. You're not seeing as many guys just break open because of miscommunication or busts in coverage. And that's where the Bears are going to have to stay consistent, because the Packers kind of broke their game open because of 2 jump balls that the Steelers just misplayed, and then just fundamental breakdowns in the structure of their defense. But that hasn't happened the last few weeks. They're if you beat them with great throws, great catches, and things like that, where it's just, hey, mano a mano, that guy got me. But you're not going to get as many open looks as you've seen the Steelers give up in some earlier games this season. And I think that's going to be interesting to see for Caleb Williams. If the Steelers can limit DeAndre Swift in this run game, if they can keep him bottled up from having the explosives that can turn a short run play into a long run play, a long run play into an explosive run play. If they can do that and force this to be about Caleb Williams and he holds on to the ball in the pocket, that plays right into the Steelers' hands because they still have the pass rushers. I know TJ Watt doesn't have super sack numbers this year, but he still brings it. Nick Herbig is a third-year guy off the other side of the edge that's been coming in, even if Alex Highsmith isn't healthy for this game. Herbig is a monster there. And then Cam Hayward's still Cam Hayward. Derek Harmon's really come around. And Keanu Benton, third-year defensive tackle out of Wisconsin, he has really picked up his pass rush. I think he has 4.5 sacks on the season. He had like 4 pressures last week alone. This is a defense that's playing a lot better, a lot more aggressive, and a lot faster. And so the Bears, I think despite the numbers, when you look at it, the Bears eighth in scoring, Steelers 16th in scoring on defense. This is a chance for the Steelers to have another step forward to reclaiming themselves as a good defense this year, because they were not for the first 7 weeks of the season.
I'll admit I'm a little biased when it comes to Keanu Benton because he went to my high school and I met his parents.
Hey,
he's a really, really good dude and a really good community.
He's a really
guy.
good dude. Yeah.
I've got the connection there, but I am worried a little bit about this Steelers front from a Bears perspective. Like, especially Chicago's big weakness, there's no secret, is the left tackle. Theo Benedette he was an undrafted free agent last year who spent all the year on injured reserve. This is his first ever year starting. He wasn't really plan A, B, or C at left tackle, but they put him in. And he's been their best option as the season's gone on. He just hasn't been that good as a result. And I'm with you there. Herbig has been a big breakout for them in Pittsburgh. I know he's been kind of growing the last couple of seasons, but I think this year in particular, he's been a real threat. I think generally speaking, Caleb has done a better job of picking his battles a little bit when it comes to holding on to the ball too long. That he's been miraculous at escaping sacks in a way that just it's incredible. I mean, you can try and describe it to people, but there's going to be 2 or 3 plays where you're thinking in this game, the Steelers have him dead to rights and you don't. And it's hard to explain, but like that never stops.
I've seen it.
Yeah. But I think the issue in the past has been like, he makes that first guy miss and then he runs around and then still gets sacked, or he runs around and, misses a receiver because they're not on the same page. And what's been better this year is being more decisive once he makes that first guy miss. He'll take off and scramble and get the first down if they're in man coverage and he's got room to run, or he'll get outside the pocket and he'll throw it away and just say, screw it. I can't, there's nothing there. I'm just going to throw it away and live to fight another down. Or, he'll still, fire some balls downfield and make some plays there, but he's been avoiding the negative plays more so than like creating amazing positive plays. And that's still like a big step forward from where he was last year. So I think the Steelers are going to get some pressure on him. I think he's going to escape a lot of that pressure. They'll still sack him once or twice. Like, he's not unsackable. It's just you're going to leave the game thinking they should have had him 6 times and they only got him twice.
No, I hear that. And then listen, the Steelers, their pass rush hasn't had to deal with as many mobile quarterbacks with Joe Flacco, but they've seen it with Justin Herbert. They've seen it with Daniel Jones. They've seen it with Jordan Love and his ability to get loose. They've seen it with Drake May. And so Justin Fields, they've seen it this year, and they know it's coming because the week after they play the Bears, they're playing Josh Allen. They're playing Lamar Jackson. So they know it's coming there. But I think that's the thing here. And the Steelers, Mike Tomlin even acknowledged on his Tuesday press conference, he's like, we don't have a guy that kind of runs around the way that Caleb Williams does, as far as like scout team wise. And so they're trying to figure out who can be that guy in practice to kind of simulate that, because they have to be attentive of things. The Steelers have to maintain gap integrity, but also still be aggressive in closing down those gaps and getting after Caleb Williams. But that's the number one goal for this team. The philosophy is always the same. Stop the run first, pressure the quarterback, force mistakes, and defense in the secondary, be aggressive in going after to take the ball away. They want to create the splash plays. If Caleb Williams can go into this game and not turn the ball over, that's the key. If he avoids turnovers, the Steelers defense becomes a bit less of an issue, because they are huge on turnovers. The Bears are huge on turnovers. They have an average 2.2 a game. The Steelers are averaging a turnover a game. They're 11th best in the NFL with their turnover rate. 1.8. Excuse me, they're 4th best. I was reading the wrong stat line there, but they're 4th best in the NFL right now in turnover. So I think this game really does come down to, on both sides, can the Bears get Rodgers or Rudolph to commit the big mistakes first, because I've really seen the last couple of games, Steelers Chargers was neck and neck, and then all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers threw an interception and the Chargers were able to break the game open. The Steelers and Bengals were kind of neck and neck, and then Joe Flacco throws a pick six, and then the Steelers just take over the game. The Colts, the Steelers get more turnovers. They're able to beat them. Same thing with their win over the Patriots. Again, two of the top teams in the AFC right now. If the Bears want to win this game, Caleb Williams has to protect the football. If he gets them a turnover or two, the Steelers just feed off of it, and that's where things go downhill for their opponents.
I'll say generally he's taken good care of the football. His interceptions usually come not on like a bad decision, but like throws it slightly behind a receiver. It's an accuracy as opposed to like forcing the ball somewhere that he necessarily shouldn't have. So that'll definitely be a big key to watch. Chris, real quick before we wrap up here, Bears are 2.5 point favorites at home. I'm surprised by that. Any quick predictions on this game? I find myself leaning Steelers, but it depends on just how healthy this Bears injury report comes out.
Yeah, I mean, and same thing for the Steelers. The Steelers also have, some injury questions right now when it comes to their guys. Like, Darius Slay was healthy, but will he play a whole lot because he wasn't good this year, and the guy that replaced him has honestly been playing better in James Pierre. He really took away Jamar Chase on some serious reps, but other guys that are important. One, we talk about Aaron Rodgers. Two, starting running back Jaylen Warren didn't finish the game on Sunday. Granted, Mike Tomlin said he could have if they wanted to, but he was a do not practice guy on Wednesday for the Steelers. Alex Highsmith, also a do not practice guy with a pec injury that forced him to miss the last game. So I look at that, and those could be factors too. But I just think that the Steelers, the things that they're able to do on offense, they'll be able to do, I think, against the Bears in getting it to playmakers, letting them go make plays and feeding off it. And I think they can create turnovers, but I still think this is a close one. It goes down to the final drive. And I think the Steelers win 27-21, but it will be a very close affair with some big explosive plays in both directions that kind of open things up.
Pretty much every Bears game this season has been really close and comes down to who holds the ball last in the fourth quarter. And I'm kind of expecting something similar in this matchup on Sunday.
Be sure you check out Chris over at Locked On Steelers and Lauren over at Locked On Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We've already talked about some great 1 p.m. games in Week 12, but there is still more to dive into. We have plenty coming your way next on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting, and I like picking my favorite players like Lamar Jackson, Nikola Jokic, to see how my predictions play out. New Stacks features a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Oestreicher is still here with you, diving into all of the Week 12 action. And with the help of our local experts, we're breaking every game down for you. We talked about some great 1 p.m. action. Let's continue that here, starting off with the New York Jets and the Baltimore Ravens, where the Ravens are on a nice little 4-game win streak. They're back to 500 at 5-5 after a 1-5 start. Meanwhile, the Jets, they traded away Quinnen Williams. They traded away Sauce Gardner. They're 2-8 and are just looking for pieces for next year at this point, probably. So myself, Kevin Oestreicher of Locked On Ravens, and John Butchko of Locked On Jets talk about which team will come out on top. Continuing on Locked On Ravens and Locked On Jets, Kevin Oestreicher and John Butchko still talking with you on this Crossover Thursday. I want to remind everyone today's Crossover Thursday is brought to you and presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. All right, John, let's get into some keys to victory for both teams. I'll start with the Jets. What are some keys for you that the Jets have to take care of if they want to win this game?
The first one for me is the Jets need to use Breece Hall in the passing game more. It's been about a month and a half since Hall had more than 3 targets in a game. 2 weeks ago against the Browns, they only targeted him once. and he took that for a 42-yard touchdown on a screen. It's been one of the baffling developments of this Jets season. Kevin, I'll tell you, 2 years ago, Nathaniel Hackett was the Jets offensive coordinator, and Hackett was a very unpopular guy. By most accounts, he did a very poor job as Jets offensive coordinator. Near the end of that season, he made a comment that he didn't realize what a great receiver Breece Hall was before he started coaching him. And that was used to really bash Hackett throughout the fan base. And in context, I don't think it was completely fair, because it was really more of just Hackett complimenting Breece Hall. Oh wow, this guy's even better than I thought. That year, the Jets targeted Hall as much as any team targeted their running back in the league. This year, the Jets aren't targeting Hall in the passing game, and he's a talented player. But you also look at the quarterback play the Jets have had. You look at the receivers the Jets have been running out there. There's not a lot of talent in this passing game, so it makes no sense not to utilize his skills as a receiver. Against New England, he only played on 5 third downs, 2 of which were on the first drive, which I think we were on the script. The other 3 were in the fourth quarter when it was desperation time. You're trying to come back. You keep your best players on the field. So that says to me that the Jets are taking him off the field on passing downs. And it just doesn't make sense why you take your best player off the field on the money downs. Even if he's a running back, he's still a weapon as a receiver. So I think the Jets need to utilize Breece Hall more in the passing game.
Yeah, that's a huge one. And, the Ravens have also kind of taken some flack for keeping some of their best players off of the field in key third or fourth down moments. Derrick Henry in particular, they've gotten better at that this season. It was more of a last year thing, but it's popped up here and there. I think for the Ravens, something I'm looking at for them is they've just not been good in the red zone this year. They're the 26th best, or 28th, excuse me, even worse, 28th best red zone offense in the NFL. 47.2% in the red zone this year. They went 1 for 4 against Cleveland in week 11. Again, it's just like that field shortens up. Feels like they just aren't able to get the job done there when they need it. And, it's really important in these games that you score touchdowns instead of kick field goals, where that's how this Ravens offense operates. Like, you shouldn't be struggling in the red zone, or even like the 10 or 5 yard line of the opposing team when you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. But that's been kind of the story for them. So that'd be a big key for me. Another one for Baltimore is just stay out of your own way. I mean, again, we saw multiple mistakes in the game in week 11 against Cleveland. We talked about the special teams ones, but Lamar Jackson throws 2 interceptions, both of which were not his fault. One went off in the hands of Keaton Mitchell for a pick 6 into Devin Bush's arms. The other one, Raja Rosengarten, got pushed back into the backfield so quickly and so badly that Lamar's throw bounced off of his helmet up in the air into the waiting arms of Carson Schlesinger. So, I think that the Ravens, they have an opportunity to win this game and win it comfortably, but they have to stay out of their own way with their mistakes. I think a final one would just be to play their game, particularly defensively, and just force Tyrod Taylor's clock to speed up. Now, the difference between Taylor and the last 2 quarterbacks, or 3, I guess, they've faced with Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, and JJ McCarthy, is Tyrod Taylor's been around. Tyrod Taylor is a veteran. That hasn't been the case with the past 2 matchups for Baltimore. So being able for them to maybe give him looks that are unfamiliar or uncomfortable, get pressure on him and force him to make a couple bad throws, force turnovers, win that turnover battle. I think that's really important for the Ravens too.
Yeah, and I would actually say something similar for the Jets. Key to victory: Jets need to play disciplined football. I think anybody looking at this game would conclude that Baltimore is the more talented team, and that means that when you're the less talented team, you can't make things easy for your opponent. In New England last week, the Jets made things easy. They played undisciplined football, and that's been one of the stories for the Jets on defense this year, whether you talk about missed tackles, whether you talk about penalties, whether you talk about breakdowns in basic coverages. These have been issues all season long for the Jets. And one thing that has been on my mind all week is I don't think I've ever seen a defensive lineman play zone reads in a less disciplined way than Michael Clemens. And I just envision 2 or 3 times in this game, Lamar Jackson, and Derrick Henry back there. And Lamar's going to fake a handoff to Henry, and Clemens will bite and run himself onto I-95, and Lamar will pull it and break off a big gain. Jets just need to play disciplined football. And that's something that's been lacking. And when you're a relatively untalented team by NFL standards. Look, everybody who plays in the NFL is talented, but you compare the Jets roster with most other teams, it's near the bottom of the league. You can't just give things away the way the Jets have. And if the Jets want any chance of keeping this game competitive, they have to play smarter, more sounder football.
And that would be music to a lot of Ravens fans' ears when you're talking about Lamar Jackson running. He hasn't really run as much this season. John Harbaugh said there's really nothing to it, but, there have been moments where you would think, oh, hey, Lamar's going to rush a little bit in this game, and it just hasn't really happened as much throughout the course of the year. So maybe this is the game where that all gets broken out and the Ravens have success doing it. But for now, two teams in different situations right now, still looking to put up a W. You can find John over at Locked On Jets. You can find me over at Locked On Ravens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Next up, the Seahawks and the Titans. The Seahawks look good this year. Sam Darnold, you have Mike McDonald. I mean, that team is looking great. Meanwhile, the Titans, not so much. Again, playing for next year at this point, seeing what Cam Ward has to offer. Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans and Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks talk about if the Titans can pull the upset or if this is Seattle all the way.
All right, Corbin, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On Titans, Locked On Seahawks, Crossover Thursday. Thank you for making us your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports network. We talked about the storylines in this game. We talked about some of the matchups that we're looking for. Now we got to get into keys to victory. And honestly, Corbin, I'm gonna kick us off here from an upset standpoint for the lowly Titans here, trying to find a way to get a win at home, which they haven't done in over a year. It's all about turnovers. That's always going to be the biggest part of the equation. That's the meat of the sandwich when you're trying to pull a big upset here and the talent is this disparate on paper. I think if the Titans are able to turn over the Seahawks multiple times and not only end their drives, which lowers the offensive output of an explosive offense, but also could give the Titans struggling offense easier opportunities to put points on the board. I think turnovers is a place where the Titans can get an advantage. And at the end of the day, the Seahawks have had some turnover games where they've had massive turnover outcomes and they've been able to win some of those. Like there's a 4 turnover game in there that they won. It's crazy. So even if the Titans win the turnover battle in a major way, it doesn't guarantee that they win, but it certainly is a logical first step for them trying to pull off an upset here is to win the turnover battle.
Yeah, and I think from Seattle's perspective, look, you don't take any teams in this league lightly. You can't do that or you're going to get whipped on Sunday. But just don't turn the ball over, Seattle. If you don't turn the ball over, you win by 25, 30 points in this game. That's the key. Play within yourself. And I'm going to actually lean in the run game here when we're talking about keys because for all the injuries that the Titans have on the back end, you can take advantage of that, but I think you need to get the run game going so that you have the play action off of it, which Sam Darnold has been so good. Other than last week, for whatever reason, he threw a couple picks on play action, but he's been really good on play action all year long. I mentioned earlier attacking the edges, not even necessarily in this game that you're wanting to run to the perimeter like boundary, off tackle. Yeah, this feels like a game where that wide zone, some of your wide split zone concepts that you like to run. And I could even see him sprinkling in some gap plays as well, attacking off tackle. I think if the Seahawks are able to do that, I like Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and George Halani, who's starting to get more opportunities. I like those three all being able to run that outside zone against this Titans defense. So I'm going to go a specific number. I think they get to 125 rushing yards. And let's say 30 carries, 125 rushing yards. They don't need to light the world on fire necessarily, but if you can hit those two markers, I can guarantee you Sam Darnold is going to hit on a number of play action passes off of that too. That is the recipe for going into Nashville and squashing the bug. And I would say that's the other thing. Don't give this team life. Come out and do what you did to the Saints, what you did to the Cardinals the last time. I'm not expecting 21 unanswered points 6 minutes into the game like they did against Arizona, although that'd be pretty nice. Come out and make it very clear early. We are the better team. We're upset this week, and we're not going to let you hang around. That is always the key in a game like this. Don't give Tennessee life with turnovers, things like that early. Squash the bug early and make it that your defense can really pin their ears back and make life really hard on Cam Ward.
Yeah, that's got to be the formula that the Seahawks What want to stick to, I would say from the Titans perspective, that start fast mantra, I think that's exactly what the Titans would hope to do. They would like to come out and kind of get their momentum going, give their defense a little bit of a break by having some drives that actually score, getting some points on the board, and not having to play from behind all the time like they have done. I think part of that is one thing that the Titans are going to have to keep in mind here as they go into this game. You're not going to shut out this Seattle offense. Like they're simply too good. You're not going to be able to completely keep them down. So I think another big thing for the Titans has to be the red zone. Now, Seattle has a great red zone defense. They're 10th in the NFL, 62%. It's not like Seattle's offense has struggled in the red zone this year. So it's like, oh, there's a pinpoint. You might be able to get some. But last week against the Rams, and the Titans defense isn't the Rams defense, but last week against the Rams, they were 1 for 4 in the red zone. I think if you're the Titans, you realize you're not going to be able to stop this Seahawks offense. They're going to, from the 20s to the 20s, they're going to move the ball on you. There's not much you can do about that. But if you can bow your neck and hold up and maybe force 3 out of 4 opportunities to be field goals, now you at least have a chance to score 21, 22, 23, 24 points and actually win the game. Because that's probably not going to get it done if you don't do well in the red zone when you know that Seattle is going to move the ball.
Yeah, you really you're carbon copying everything for me on Seattle's side. You need to finish this game. Like the inability to get touchdowns. Like if they would have scored one more touchdown in the red zone, they win that game last week.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was actually the bigger issue than the interceptions were, which is strange.
Right.
But I think even Sam Darnold kind of agreed with that based on what he said after the game. The inability to get the ball into the end zone, you can't do that against this Titans defense. Go down, impose your will. And I think that's where that run game comes in, because they have been a very effective red zone running football team this year for the most part. Come out and set the tone up front. Get your running backs the football, even out of the backfield as pass catchers, which they had some success doing late last week. I expect that's going to be something they're trending a little more towards to loosen things up for their receivers as well. I think if they can check those things off, then the favorite can do what they're supposed to do and come in and set the tone. If they fail to do a few of those things, especially on the road, then you can give Tennessee life. And you and I both know, Tyler, it doesn't matter. Any given Sunday, if you let an underdog hang around in this league, you are putting yourself in position to get beat.
Yeah, and I know Titans fans are like, have you seen this team, though? There is no any given Sunday for this team, but you're right. You never know what could happen if you do a couple of things. Well, before we get out of here, Corbin, got you on the line, and since we don't talk often, Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks, is a guy who Titans fans are interested in as a potential head coaching candidate. He has done a great job with this offense. Do you think that he is a guy who's ready to be a head coach? Do you think that he could be a good option for the Titans?
I think if you're looking for a head coach that is going to be able to come in and run a quality scheme and be an offensive play caller, that Kubiak can absolutely do it. My reservation is he just does not strike me as a head coach personality. He just doesn't. And we're talking about a guy that it doesn't seem like he's very comfortable doing press conferences at all. He really doesn't like to be in the limelight like that. He strikes me as a guy that really enjoys the play calling aspect and working with his position groups. But it doesn't seem like he's that kind of personality that would necessarily be somebody that could galvanize a locker room. And maybe he is. Maybe behind closed doors, what we don't see, maybe he can do that. And maybe down the line, he becomes more of a personality to cater for that. But he's not his father had a lot more charisma than what he does. Like, that's just not, that is not Clint Kubiak's game. His is, I'm going to be putting all my X's and O's together here, and I'm going to get my guys ready for game planning stuff. So I think, especially for Tennessee, since you kind of had a similar coach from some aspects, I would say Callahan had more charisma than what Clint Kubiak has. If you're just looking for scheme, then yes, I think it makes sense. But, it's different when Brian Schottenheimer was a Seahawks offensive coordinator, and I love what he's doing in Dallas, by the way. I know they don't have a winning record, but what he's doing there.
Oh, he's doing a good job.
Guys are playing really hard for him. Brian Schottenheimer has always had that head coach persona. He's always had it. I don't see it in Clint Kubiak, at least at this point.
And I think that that's something he may grow into, like you say, like eventually that may happen. But for the Titans and where they're at right now, they desperately need someone with that kind of galvanizing personality and that leadership. And I think it's fair to say that maybe Kubiak doesn't check that box if he does check some other boxes that will make people very interested in him. But really appreciate that insight. That's something that we'll carry with us as the Titans look for a new head coach. But should be an entertaining game one way or another for somebody out there on Sunday.
You can find Corbin over at Locked On Seahawks. You can find Tyler over at Locked On Titans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Giants and Lions will round out the 1 p.m. slate here in week 12, where the Giants, they're a team that, also they're looking for next year. Meanwhile, the Lions, they're going to be a team that is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NFC playoff picture, but they're looking to find some consistency. So Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants and Matt Derry of Locked On Lions talk about keys to victory, key matchups, and so much more.
All right, Patricia, Lions and Giants, Sunday. We mentioned before the double-digit underdog that is the New York Football Giants, as they've lost 5 in a row. How do they pull this off, though? They nearly beat the Bears a couple weeks ago. They had a lead this past Sunday against Go Pack Go, Peter Bukowski's Packers. Pete was in the house the other day at the Meadowlands. They've blown a couple of late leads in other games. Like, how do they stay in it and pull this off?
Well, first off, they've got to not make mistakes. They're not good enough to overcome mistakes. We've seen that many, many times. But, I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse here, but it starts with the run defense. I mean, they are giving up close to 6 yards per carry on first downs against the run. You cannot let a team go into second and short and third and short and expect to win. It just doesn't happen. So that run defense has got to tighten things up. Interim head coach Mike Kafka spoke about how there was going to be some different drills that they were going to do this week in practice in an effort to tighten things up a little bit. So we'll see if that pays off for them. So that would probably be the first thing. The other thing on the flip side, I'm going to stay with the run here. The Giants' run game has actually been picking up a little bit since the Scadaboo injury. And that's not a reflection on Scadaboo. That's actually a good thing for the Giants because that means their offensive line, which has been an Achilles for I don't know how long now, has actually been performing better. So I think if the Giants can soften the Lions' run defense up a little bit, pick up the yardage, and not have to use Jackson Dart to do it, which is the important thing, especially with him coming off that concussion, then maybe, perhaps, that opens things up for play action. That opens things up for them to take a shot or two down the field, But the important thing for the offensive part of you, Jackson Dart can't force things. He can't play the hero. He's got 10 other guys with him. He's got to just kind of take what's there and be smart about it.
I think those are all great points. I mean, you look at the Lions and what it's going to take for them to win. I don't know, show up. I'm just kidding. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. No, they got to put the ball in the end zone. I mean, bottom line is they scored 1 touchdown this past week at Philly. And I know 2 weeks ago against Washington, they put up a 44 burger on the Commanders, but being in that division, that Commanders defense is pathetic. And JV compared to what we saw with Philly the other day, that's a damn good defense. But protecting Jared Goff first and foremost, and I know and I've said it yesterday on my show on our Tuesday's show, David Montgomery's got to get more involved. 6 carries, which he had Sunday night, is not going to cut it. Jahmyr Gibbs is probably their best player right now, and he's got to go crazy and do his thing. And getting Jahmyr the ball in space is always the game plan. But Montgomery just eases the tension. He's so steady. And like you said, they're giving up 6 a pop on the ground on first down. Why not start the game maybe with Gibbs out wide, put him in motion, have Montgomery in the game at the same time, and make the Giants think, all right, we got to shadow and follow Gibbs wherever he goes. Oh, hold on. Here comes Montgomery up the gut for a 6-7 yard punch. And now you're talking 2nd and 3 to start. Just kind of settling things down for this offense. I think that's going to be a huge part of this game. And defensively, the Lions just have to keep doing what they're doing. They've been wrapping up and tackling very well. The secondary, hopefully we'll get some guys back this week, but they've done a really good job. I know the Giants, without Neighbors, you look at that receiving core and go, who are these people? But defenses has to keep doing what they've been doing. Stay out of the penalty box. I sound like I'm talking Rangers wings here, but it's true. Stay away from penalties, late hits, Brian Branch, helmet to helmet. Just play a clean game this Sunday, and keep doing what they're doing defensively, because they've been really excellent. And nobody thought, Patricia, everybody said, though, what's the Lions' identity? Well, it's always been their offensive line, which is not as good this year, and their offense. And now all of a sudden, this has become a better defense than offense right now. It could change this week. But that's kind of something we're not used to.
But you never know. That's why you line up and you play the game. I mean,
exactly.
I'm not anticipating the Giants winning this game. I think they're going to lose by 2 scores. And
Yeah.
I've made a vow that I am not going to pick the Giants, much to, I think, the dismay of some of my listeners and readers. But I need a reason to believe.
Yeah.
I really need I picked them a lot earlier in the year. I actually thought that they would maybe have a chance with, a few breaks here and there. And if they played solidly and stayed healthy, I actually thought at one point they might go, win 8 games, maybe even 9 games. They have not given me a reason to believe. And, I get it. There's been injuries, but you can't hang your hat on that and say, oh, that's the reason why this season is lost. They haven't played well on defense. They've got a top 15 talent defense that has not played like a top 15. And, I'm going to beat the drum until the end of the season about the job the defensive coordinator has done. Offensively, the changeover and quarterback. I mean, if that's what you wanted to do, why didn't you just do that right out of the chute? It's like you wasted 3 games. And I don't know if it was because they wanted to wait until Andrew Thomas came back at left tackle or what the reason was, but it was just, they ended up changing the offense totally to fit Jackson Dart. Now, is it a little bit better than what they were running under Russell Wilson? I think it was, but I don't know what the Giants are doing in sometimes. And I take pride in knowing that, at least seeing what they're trying to do, even if I don't agree with it. And just this year, it's just been one head scratcher after another.
Well, speaking of head scratchers, Jonathan Vilma is calling the game. So enjoy that. He's done, and I said this yesterday, he's done 5 Lion games this year. I can't take it. Thank God I will be in the stadium Sunday, because I'm not, and you're not traveling, you're not coming?
No, I'm not making this one.
So if you can somehow turn the volume down and turn on Bob Papa and Carl Banks, that's what I would suggest. So try to sync your television, because Vilma is he's a piece of work.
You can find Matt over at Locked On Lions. You can find Patricia over at Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That'll do it for the 1 p.m. slate of games, but it will not do it for us here on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Coming up, we have a great 4 p.m. window to dive into. Plenty coming your way on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping and checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying, and I love zone deals too. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Continuing on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Ostreicher is still here with you. We dove into the 1 p.m. slate of games for Week 12. The 4 o'clock window has some pretty juicy matchups. We're going to start with the big headline of the week, which is Shedeur Sanders making his first NFL start for the Cleveland Browns. It's going to be against the Las Vegas Raiders. Shedeur got in against the Baltimore Ravens in Week 11. Didn't go great, but this will be his first real opportunity with prep. Obviously, that game he came in for Dylan Gabriel, who had the concussion, and hopefully Dylan Gabriel gets well soon. But in the meantime, it is going to be Shedeur Sanders' time in Cleveland against the Las Vegas Raiders team that put together not so great of a performance against the Dallas Cowboys on Monday night in Week 11. So Spencer German of Locked On Browns and your boy Q of Locked On Raiders talk about how Shedeur is going to do in this game and keys to victory.
All right, final part of our conversation here on this crossover edition of Locked On Browns and Locked On Raiders. It's Spencer German. It's your boy Q. Q, I don't know. I should have asked you this in the beginning before we recorded, actually. Do you do predictions on your crossovers? Do you save them for Friday? I usually save mine for Friday.
Yeah, that's cool. We can do that.
Okay.
We can do that. Yeah, I don't mind that at all.
I'm just making sure. Like I said, this is a little inside baseball here. We should have discussed that beforehand, but
all good.
We do have to talk about some paths to victory for both these teams. I'll let you sort of have the floor here first. Again, what is the first thing that's on your mind when it comes to the Raiders' path to victory against this Cleveland Browns team?
Well, you got to protect Geno Smith. You got to protect Geno Smith, and you got to protect Geno Smith. Like that's got to be the first, second, and third priority. I mean, it really does. And we've seen this Raiders offensive line be a sieve, and we've seen them, just not be able to hold up at all. And that's just going to wreck the offense. And so the Raiders offense has not got cooking at all. Look, they only averaged 18 points per game last year. They hired Chip Kelly, made him the highest paid offensive coordinator in the league, and everyone thought, including myself, hey, man, this is going to be a lot better looking offense. And now they're averaging about 15 points a game. So they've taken a step back. And now you've got a defense like Cleveland coming into town and a guy like Myles Garrett. He's a dude that, just like Max Crosby, will wreck a game. So protecting Geno Smith, first and foremost, is what they have to do. I believe that they have to have a balance on offense as well. As much as they want to throw the ball around the yard and get Geno going and try to get the ball out of his hands, and they've got to be able to run the ball too. There's just no way that they can walk away from that game with like 12 carries. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like that just can't happen. They've got to be able to have some kind of commitment to the running game. And when you draft a guy like Ashton Jeanty, number 6 overall, you're telling me you're going to run the ball, and they haven't been able to do that. So offensively, you got to protect Geno Smith. You also have to find some element of a ground game. I mean, if you have some kind of ground game, that's going to slow down the edge rushers a little bit, right? It'll make them slow down just a little bit because they know you can run the ball. And then defensively, I think they just got to harass Shedeur Sanders. They got to confuse him, right? They don't necessarily have to, blitz him every time and sack him a lot. I mean, obviously, it would be great if they did, but they've just got to show him so many different looks. All these different looks where he's not too sure what he's seeing. And, again, as a rookie, he's going to have moments where he struggles. And we did see him get better towards the end of that game against the Ravens. So you don't want him to get comfortable. I think that's the biggest key, is make sure that he doesn't get comfortable, because once he gets comfortable, then, I mean, you start to see a little bit of pep in his step. You see a little bit of swagger about himself. And when that starts going, then he's in his zone. He's in his element. And that's when he becomes a really dangerous quarterback. And he's the guy that we saw at Colorado. The Raiders can't let the guy that you saw at Colorado that felt like he was the best guy on the field every time he stepped out there. They can't let him do that on Sunday against them at Allegiant Stadium.
I think that's a great point, because one thing that I've always admired about Shedeur, and one of the reasons I loved him in the pre-draft process, was just like his ability to talk the talk and walk the walk. Like sometimes there's just like a thing you can't account for when you draft somebody. Yep. And skill and the tape tells you a lot, but sometimes a guy just gets out there, lights are on them, they're bright, they're shining down on you, and they know how to perform. And so I think if he does get in a rhythm and he gets comfortable and all those things, you could see him start to, gain confidence and just kind of build upon it. And I think along those lines, one of the biggest things for me in terms of a path to victory for the Browns starts with, you alluded to it on the Raiders side as well, but getting the run game going. I think if they can establish the run and they can find some success doing that, I think it helps take some pressure off Shedeur. I think it opens up the playbook for him to do even more things that they potentially want to do with him. The play action game obviously can be built off of that a little bit, and you can take some shots downfield. So I like, and Quinshon Judkins, we haven't even talked about him yet. This is the first time I mentioned his name. He has been one of the best running backs in this class so far this season. I think he's just ahead of Jeanty in terms of rushing yards this year. And he's had some success on the ground, and he is kind of the thing in their offense that if you can get that thing going and get him going, there's going to be success that follows. The problem for him, similar to the Raiders, like you mentioned, is that a lot of his yards come after contact. He's getting contacted at the line of scrimmage, and it's up to him to sort of create some things for himself. And that's easier said than done at times. So can they get him some actual running lanes to get through? Can they get him some actual places to break outside and break off some of those bigger runs? We'll see. But if they can get if they can get the run game going a little bit, I think it helps everything with the offense, including get Shedeur Sanders just a little bit more comfortable standing back there. I also think too, on the flip side of that, like defensively, I think obviously we talked about it a little bit last segment, but trying to make sure you don't get beat by Brock Bowers. It's almost one of those situations where a team, like you see this in the NBA all the time, you go against a team that has like one star player and you're like, all right, we're going to make sure this guy doesn't beat us. We're going to take him away. If you know the Raiders' strength is Brock Bowers on offense, do what you can to limit the damage from him and dare the Raiders to beat you any other way but that. So we'll see what that looks like. And the other thing I'll say, because this happened a couple weeks ago, going into that Browns-Jets game in Week 10 off the bye, I felt like the Browns should win that game because they have, of the two teams, they had the elite unit. They have the elite defense that can, limit the damage from the other team's offense. And I thought the offense would do enough to win the football game. And I kind of feel that way about this game, where the Browns have an elite unit. I don't know that the Raiders have like an elite unit to that level. Right. And so I feel like the Browns should win this game because of that. But here's the thing. Special teams is always an X factor. And in that Jets game, special teams was an X factor. The Jets returned 2 kicks, a kickoff return and a punt for touchdowns. And that's what ultimately decided that football game. So I'm going to throw in the fact that the Browns cannot forget about that third phase of the game against the Raiders on Sunday, because just when you think like, oh man, their defense is going to dominate this game, Geno Smith's not going to be able to do anything, all of a sudden you get hit with a punt return, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a kick return, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a deficit that you're trying to claw yourself out of offensively, and this Browns offense just is not built to come from behind. I don't care who they're playing. So they have to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to those special teams units and making sure that they play a really sound game in those areas as well.
It's funny that you mentioned special teams, because that's been a problem for the Raiders this year. That's why they fired their special teams coordinator a couple Fridays ago in Tom McMahon, and Darius Swinton II has taken over. And last week on Monday, his unit looked pretty good, right? Daniel Carlson, the field goal kicker, converted all his field goals, converted his extra point. I thought the punt team obviously always does good with A.J. Cole. He's a great punter. But the coverage looked pretty good. The Raiders have struggled when it comes to kick return. They haven't had a kick return touchdown since Jacoby Ford did it. And that was, I think, 2009, maybe 2010. That was the last time they had a kick return touchdown, which is unbelievable. There's teams that have 1 or 2 in a game, let alone every 15 years or so. And that's how long it's been for the Raiders. I've been pounding the table almost every episode of Locked On Raiders podcast can I just get one? Can at one point I just keep one, take it back to the house? So maybe this could be the week. If the Browns kind of struggle in special teams, maybe the Raiders can show me one and take one back to the house. I'd be very appreciative if they would do that. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'd love to know the last time the Browns had a kick return for a touchdown or a punt return for a touchdown, because off the top of my head, I don't remember. You had that stat on hand. That's good by you. I'll also say this. There's a little bit of like a demon that the Browns have to exercise here in a couple areas. They haven't won a road game in 13 straight road games. So it's been a while since they won on the road, dating back to week 2 of last season was the last time they won a road game. And they haven't beaten the Raiders in quite some time either. Their last win against the Raiders came in 2014. They were still playing in Oakland back then, for those who maybe forgot. So it's been a while, and they just lost to the Raiders last year on the road in this very building. Yep. So a little bit of another demon they kind of have to exercise there is trying to get this monkey off their back against this team that, for whatever reason, they've kind of been bottom dwellers, both these teams over the course of that history. But the Raiders have always seemed to have their number. So it's an interesting sort of historic sort of figure there as well that the Browns are looking to sort of exercise.
I got one more little nugget for you, and this is a negative for the Browns, and this is not to throw shade or anything. I just know it's at the top of my head. For quarterbacks that are getting their first start in their career with the Browns, they're 0-17. So
yeah,
just
that's another good one. I remember that came up a couple weeks ago when Dylan was making his first start. I remember back earlier in the season, and I kind of forgot about that one. But now you're reminding me that it's another. He added another notch to that belt, if you will. And so Shedeur's looking to avoid that too.
You can find Spencer over at Locked On Browns. You can find Q over at Locked On Raiders, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Game of the week potential here between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Dallas Cowboys. You have an NFC East matchup that might mean a little something here for both teams. Dallas trying to work their way back into the playoff race after their big win against the Raiders. Meanwhile, the Eagles, they're looking to just pick up another win here. So Louis DiBiase of Locked On Eagles and Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys talk about which NFC East team will come out on top.
Welcome back to this crossover edition of the Locked On Cowboys and Locked On Eagles podcast. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's talk about some keys to victory. What do the Eagles need to do on Sunday to get a W?
I think the number one thing is they need to win with 4 on the defensive line because the Dallas Cowboys have a really good passing attack. The CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens 1-2 punch has maybe been the best in football this year, or it's definitely been up there. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, they held Amon-Ra St. Brown to the worst catch percentage any receiver has had in a single game this year. How they were able to do that, of course, both of them are kind of having all-pro seasons at cornerback, but 7 dropping back makes it a lot easier when they don't need to rely on their blitzing linebackers, Nakobe Dean, Jahad Campbell, Zach Baugh, having to get downhill, get after the quarterback. It makes things easier in coverage. So for me, if they can continue to wreck ball games with just getting there, 4 guys on the defensive line, Marcus, I think that's the key because Dak Prescott in that passing attack, like that's their strength. And if they can throw on you, this is going to be a game.
And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if we see more 6 and 7 man protections for Dallas. Like, even if it means taking guys out of the passing game, give Dak time because eventually one of those guys is going to get open, or you can take a shot down the field on a 50-50 ball. So I love that call. For the Cowboys, I think the most important thing is the game script. You cannot get behind on this Philadelphia team because they can be suffocating, right? They get a touchdown lead, a double-digit score lead, and then they can just tee off, and then they can use their offense to run clock and have these 7-8 minute drives where it's 15 plays and there's 3 tush pushes and you just don't get the ball back. And it shortens these games. When the Cowboys have had success this year, Louis, it's been jumping up to a 14-7 lead, 17-7. And now you can blitz and you don't have to worry about stopping the run as much. I think at home against this Philadelphia team, I expect Brian Schottenheimer and the Cowboys to be highly aggressive early in this game, trying to jump out to that lead.
Yeah, and I think the Eagles offense, like another key to victory, they need to get the run game going. Like they can't allow Dallas to force them to throw the football at a high value. Because again, the Eagles offense, historically with Jalen Hurts, they've had some monster games, especially when it really matters most. I mean, both Super Bowls they've been in the last 4 years, Jalen Hurts threw them nearly to one championship and definitely got them another ring. But it's inconsistent. Like Jalen Hurts, that is who he is, especially with a bad play caller, I think, straight up. And Kevin Patullo, the run game needs to be the high volume, consistent part of that unit. It has not been this year, and there's a lot of different factors for why. But especially now that Lane Johnson's not playing in this game, how do you help make it easier for backup offensive linemen? I think it's easier for them to run block than it is to pass protect. So get that run game going early, kind of like you were mentioning with Dallas. Get a lead, control time of possession, especially with the way you play conservative, turnover-free football right now. I think that's the way to get this going. Play more under center. That'll allow the play-action passing game eventually to open up. We'll see. The run game has been, it's crazy how inconsistent it's been when last year they maybe had the best running season in the history of the NFL. But they got to find a way to get that going because even with all the passing weapons this team has, I just don't think that'll ever be the thing that can carry them on offense.
And for Dallas, it's about stopping those first down runs because I think the way to beat Philadelphia is to get them in 2nd and 10, 3rd and 9, where they have to be a drop back passing.
That's their Achilles heel. Yeah.
And it's not to say that they can't do it because they're going to hit some big plays in the passing game. But if you can get out of those 3rd and shorts, 4th and shorts, where you can run the tush push and convert, that's how the Cowboys can stay in this game. And that's how they stayed in the first game in week 1. So Louis, it's going to be a fun game. I don't anticipate, we're not going to do predictions because we're going to save it for our Friday show. Yeah. I don't anticipate a blowout. I think these two teams, when they're both fairly healthy, we haven't had many games where Dak and Jalen Hurts are both playing, but generally they're pretty close games, and I would expect the same here.
I was going to say, I mean, with these two starters in the game, it's going to be close. The Eagles haven't really blown out anybody this year outside of the Giants before the bye week. That's not their brand of football right now. On the road, like you said, Dallas needs this game to save their season with their tough schedule coming up. Yeah, I definitely expect this to be a one possession game. Probably it's going to come down to the fourth quarter again for sure.
Check out Louie over at Locked On Eagles. Check out Marcus over at Locked On Cowboys, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jaguars and the Cardinals. Jaguars surprising some people this season. Blowout win against the Chargers in Week 11. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, no Kyler Murray. Jacoby Brissett comes in. Michael Wilson has a career day. So underrated teams here, I feel like. Alex Clancy of Locked On Cardinals and Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jaguars talk about which team is going to come out with a victory.
All right. Crossover Thursday. I mean, the Cardinals have fared pretty well of late. They don't play Jaguars often. That's, I think, the only thing the Cardinals have going for them. Plus, it starts 0-0, which helps. I'm not a huge at this point, Tony, I don't know what the hell to think. So with keys to victory, the one thing that I do know with his history is Trevor Lawrence can turn the ball over. He is very good at it at times. He puts the ball on the ground so much more than a 6'5", whatever the hell he is, dude should be doing, and it's so frustrating. He throws bad balls at times. And then he's, top tier precision the next rep. So for me, make him turn the ball over. Get in his kitchen, get in his face, get him on the run, and just be opportunistic. The Cardinals cannot afford to drop an interception ball, cannot afford to not recover a fumble. They need to be proficient with that if the opportunity arises.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And while it sounds cliche, it's the absolute truth. The Jaguars, when they force turnovers, they win. And when Trevor turns it over, or anybody else for that matter, they don't. And that's seriously the key to them each and every week. But you're right. Some of Trevor's turnovers have been real head scratchers. And it usually comes at a real bad time. So those are the things, just for your listeners who haven't watched them, it's like Jay Cutler. You remember you saw Jay Cutler and Aaron Rodgers, you go, well, they both whipped the ball. I don't see a difference in their arm talent. But one guy was throwing 45 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and the other guy was throwing 20 and 16. That's the thing that bothers you about him. But I warn you about something. He is at his absolute best when he gets dirty. If you hit him and you put a strawberry on his elbow and he comes to the sideline and he turns into gritty Trevor from Middle South Georgia instead of worrying about being the prince that was promised and sunshine and all of that stuff, he absolutely, when he gets put in a hurry, can whip you, just like he did against the Chiefs. And just like in every other game that he wins that people don't think that they're supposed to win, he'll turn into like Roger Staubach in a heartbeat, and that talent will come out. So sometimes you just got to be careful. I think the key for me, though, is they got to run the football. When they run the football, when they get 150 yards on the ground, they can control the clock, and then those windows get bigger in between the linebackers and the safeties, and that's when those throws don't have to be as exact. So for me, just control the controllable, make sure you don't turn it over, get the offensive line to get people moving and run the football, and take a little bit of the pressure off of him. So now when you do play action and you let him rip, he can do it with confidence.
Yeah, that's right. And I told you in the first segment that Travis Etienne is the public enemy number one for me going into Sunday, whether it be, in the intermediate or short route run or just him running the ball between the tackles. Like, for me, like the one thing that I want, like the only thing that could trump that is Trevor Lawrence's legs. Like, that's the thing where it's like, this gets silly. The rushing touchdowns inside the 10, there's been a couple of them this year. And one of them I could have walked through the hole where nobody knew a quarterback draw was like, they just spread it out. Oh, there's nobody here. Cool. I can moonwalk in here. But his ability to get in the end zone, like, this, like, not every talented NFL player has a nose for the end zone. Like, Ezekiel Elliott had a nose for the end zone. LaDainian Tomlinson, nose for the end zone. Travis Etienne doesn't as much as other people. Like, the fact that he's dropped at the one so many times, it blows my mind. But Trevor Lawrence can get his ass in the end zone if he's close. And it's something that scares me the most in the rush attack as a separate entity, because if he runs the ball, the Cardinals are screwed. Like, what do you stop? That's a tertiary thing you got to watch out for. Trey McBride, just do it. I always use, with my listeners, I always use Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers as an example. He's always open. Doesn't matter. Bracket, double, triple, always open. 10 red zone touchdowns a year. Everybody knows he's getting the ball. That speed across that speed play action, and you just throw him the ball and he's open, touchdown. It's like, that's Trey McBride now, though. Haven't seen it since Fitz. He's always open, and he's always going to get the ball. He's going to have 10 catches for over 100 yards and a touchdown on Sunday. He just will. And that needs to happen for the Cardinals to keep this game close.
I agree with you. And if that happens, it's going to make it even closer. I'll take 10 for 120 and a tutty. What I can't get is what Brock Bowers did, which is either 200 or damn near close to it, where you just totally take the game over. That would absolutely destroy any chance that the Jaguars have of winning this game if they allow one person to get off like that. Dalton Schultz got loose at the wrong time in the fourth quarter when they had the Jaguars on skates and reeling in that game that they lost to Houston. But here's what I'll tell you to watch out for. They should have beat Houston and they should have beat Cincinnati. This should be a 2-loss team right now, okay? And those 2 losses were to NFC West teams. The Rams blew them out, and Seattle kind of opened the lead up on them and held them off a little bit. And then I looked at you guys' schedule and I realized you won one game that you probably were not favored in, and on paper it looked like you weren't going to win it, and that's Dallas. You definitely lost a game that you should never have lost against the Titans. But then the other 6 losses have been 2 to the 49ers, 2 to Seattle, 1 to Green Bay, and the other one to the Indianapolis Colts. Y'all weren't supposed to beat them anyway. So the thing is be careful looking at 3 and 7 and thinking that this is a walk in the park. It is absolutely not a walk in the park. And the Jaguars lost to Jake Browning and Davis Mills in those 2 games that I said that they should have won. This can't be a repeat. That's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid Jacoby will get hot and the Jaguars won't play their absolute best. And the Cardinals will be in it late. The crowd will be into the game. And then you're one Trey McBride completion away from hitting a field goal. That's the kind of stuff that scares me.
Yeah. No, and you're right. I mean, for Jaguars fans watching this, like, the Cardinals started 2 and 3. They got 19 points per game. They were 2 and 5. Those 5 points were those 5 losses were by combined 13 points. Indy, Green Bay, Seattle by 3, and the 49ers by 1. And Tennessee by 1. Like, this team should have started much hotter win-loss wise than they've done. This is the most frustrating year I've had in my 9 here because there's no rhyme or reason as to why it's happening. The only thing that's worse than having a problem is not knowing what the problem is. I have no idea what the hell the problem is. Like, you have ideas, like everything's the problem. So it's like, what the hell are we doing here? And when you see a team like Jacksonville, it's like, it's muddy sometimes, but you get it done. You're 6-4. You beat Kansas City. You're in the 7 seed right now. You control your own fate regards to that for the most part because Kansas City's so far behind. Indy may fall back. Like, you guys are doing what the Cardinals are supposed to be doing this year. That was the emergence that was supposed to happen. And the Cardinals have been riddled with injury, but what team isn't?
Yeah, I know it. They've been fortunate. Like I said, they should be, instead of 6-4, 8-2. They could very well in a couple of those games also be 4-6. So they find a way to get it done, and I think that's a part of the DNA of this team. So I think they're going to find a way to get it done this week. I think it's going to be closer than people think, but as long as they get on the plane with a victory and they're 7-4, and then, it gets a little bit easier for them here for a week or two. So all of the teams that are in the playoff hunt along with them, like last week, they beat one of them. See, they beat the Chargers too. They beat the Chargers and the Chiefs. So those 2 teams are contending, but they're 1.5 games ahead of them. If they end up in the tie, the Jaguars have a half a game tiebreaker on both of those teams. So they really need this game. This is a game on paper they're supposed to win, and it's one I think they will win Sunday.
I think it'll be in the 20s. It's not like last possession wins. The Cardinals have shot themselves in the foot. The last 2 weeks, 2 were with the scoop and scores in Seattle, and the most recent was a 98-yard kickoff return to start the game that ended in a Christian McCaffrey touchdown 15 seconds into the game, and then that was it. Let's hope that it's a good game. Tony Wiggins, one of my best buds here. How many years have you been doing this? You 7?
Yeah, it's almost 7. It's 6.5 now for me at Lockdown. Yeah,
OGs. Now there's there's hundreds of people on this platform.
Yeah, I had a full hair of black hair when I started this, and now it's salt and pepper and grit.
Come on.
Yeah.
The Cardinals did it.
Alex can be found over at Locked On Cardinals, and Tony can be found over at Locked On Jaguars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Rounding out the 4 p.m. slate of games, the Atlanta Falcons and the New Orleans Saints will battle in an NFC South showdown. The Falcons without Michael Penix in this game. Meanwhile, the Saints coming off their bye week, just looking for anything here. So Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints and Aaron Freeman of Locked On Falcons talk about which NFC South team will get the win.
Let's get it, everybody. We're wrapping up this crossover edition, Locked On Falcons and Locked On Saints. So, Aaron, finish the sentence for me. The Atlanta Falcons win if
they can start fast. This team is a front runners. That's basically what they've been all season long. And unfortunately, in typical Falcons fashion, they started fast last week and didn't come up in the end. It's almost as if like this is a team that's known for blowing leads or something like that.
I would have never thought about that. I don't know why you would say that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's same old Falcons. But, basically their only chance is really to kind of start fast and just kind of hold on for dear life and hope that, they can get an early lead that will allow the Saints to be a little bit more one-dimensional and, force Tyler Shuck to have to be in a more standard drop back. And hopefully they can sort of key up that blitz. And if they can get the run game going early, which they were unable to do again in that Dolphins game in week 8, that I think is going to help allow them to not have to rely on unreliable playmakers and pass catchers that have been the case this season in the passing game with Drake London. With Drake London out and Kyle Pitts and Darnell Mooney having to take over, and really not a whole lot else in the passing game other than throwing the ball to Bijan Robinson. So if they can get off to a fast start and just kind of, that will allow them to play the style of football that they want to play on both sides of the ball, which is just basically we're just going to run for 200 yards with Bijan and Algier, and we're just going to heat up Tyler Shuck with blitzes, and that's how they win this game.
Yeah. I mean, that makes perfect sense. And listen, the Saints' fast starts have not been a part of their formula. It's been a part of their winning formula, but it's not been a part of their consistent formula. Right now, their first quarter point margin, Aaron, is minus 63 points in the first quarter. Minus 63. It will not shock you to learn, and this is true, that is worst in the NFL.
Oh.
by a margin. Like I think second place is like 49, like minus 49. And so Saints not a fast start team. So absolutely right. If that is something that the Falcons can get done, the Saints have not shown a propensity to be able to pull themselves out of holes. They too are front runners. I think for me to finish that same sentence, the Saints win this game if Tyler Shuck continues to thrive and shows consistency, and the Saints defense continues to thrive and show consistency. Really, like they need to airlift everything that they did against the Carolina Panthers and just drop it into this game. And if they're able to do that from a success standpoint, obviously you got to run a different game plan against a different team, a lot more cover 3 for Atlanta's defense and all these other pieces. And so like, obviously you make adjustments for the game plan, but you have to airlift that success rate over to this game. And if the Saints can do that, if the defense can limit the run game, if the defense can put some pressure on a quarterback that's not going to move around much, if Tyler Shuck can continue to deal and deliver and get guys like Chris Olave and Juwan Johnson involved, and they can run the football, if they just do the same things that they did, if they play football, Aaron, they can win this game. Like I realized that as I explained it, literally I was just describing playing football. And so if they can do that, they can win this game. The issue is that they've not shown a great propensity to be able to get that done. They'll have to show that here against their most bitter rival in a game that is sure to pack some emotion as they go through it.
Yeah, I think this game is kind of setting up for a similar type of game as that Carolina game. And as you said, if the Saints can kind of repeat the success that they had that week, that's a winnable game for them. I think this is potentially going to be a low-scoring affair just based off of what this offense has looked like with Kirk Cousins, without Drake London. And so a 13-10, 17-14, 14-13 type of football game feels like it's on the horizon now. Of course, we say that. And then, of course, Tyler Shuck is going to be dropping 5 touchdowns with Olave, and Bijan's going to rush for 7,000 yards or anything like that. And there'll be a 34-31 overtime game or something like that. But it does sort of set up for a very winnable game for the Saints if they can keep this a low scoring game And we'll see if the Falcons can win that style of football game.
Yeah. Do you have a prediction?
I'm trying to think. I go back and forth with it. It's just like I don't feel great about the Falcons winning this game, and I feel like it's gonna be like a close, like again, like a 14-13. The Saints edge them out in the end, just because I just have no confidence in this version of the Falcons offense.
Completely understandable. I think this is either a slog to 20 or a race to 40, one way or another. And but I'm going slog to 20. I'll take the Saints here, 17-14. Anything you wanna add in before we wrap up?
No, I'm just ready. I don't even know if I'm ready for it. Just ready to hit fast forward to the offseason for the Atlanta Falcons.
He's like, bring me a draft. Bring me a draft.
Oh, we don't have a first round pick, Ross.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Bring me
So,
to the second day of the draft. I mean, is what I should have said.
So it's more depression on the horizon. Seasonal depression is going to be winter, spring, probably summer, fall, winter.
Dang. It's dark. It's dark in Atlanta. But there's perhaps some bright days on the way for New Orleans. So we'll see if they can get that started up against the Atlanta Falcons.
You can find Aaron over at Locked On Falcons. You can find Ross over at Locked On Saints, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We did the 1 p.m. slate. We did the 4 p.m. slate, but there's a lot of primetime madness we have not talked about yet. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that coming up on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Moving right along on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show, Kevin Ostreicher still here with you. Let's dive into this Week 12 primetime madness, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Los Angeles Rams. I think this is going to be an amazing game. Two teams that certainly need a win. The Bucks couldn't get the better of the Bills in Week 11. Meanwhile, the Rams, they did pick up a win in week number 11 against the Seattle Seahawks. So you have Travis Rogers of Locked On Rams, as well as James Jericho of Locked On Bucks, taking you through keys to victory, key storylines, and so much more.
Wrapping things up here on a crossover Thursday, and it is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And Travis, just to endear myself to Locked On Rams listeners even more, I'm a Celtics fan. I pray for the Lakers downfall. I'm not a diehard. My son's a big Celtics fan, so I kind of adopted them to cheer them on with him. But I've always hated the Lakers. So
you must have really loved the Luka Doncic trade then.
Oh, yeah, I was super excited about that one. But I mean, the Celtics beat Luka in the finals the year before. So all right. Well, back to what we're all here for, and that is the NFL Sunday Night Football, the Bucks, the Rams. What do the Rams need to do in order to win this game? What are kind of your keys to victory here?
I think you got to make Baker make quick decisions. I think that's one of those things that the Rams have been pretty good about. The Rams have been pretty darn good about limiting big plays. You know, we kind of talked about it last segment. The Rams have played against a lot of explosive players, and so far they've been really good about limiting explosive plays. You saw one last week with JSN from the Seahawks making one of the great catches you're going to see, but it was really the only very big play that Seahawks offense was able to make. So I think, like all quarterbacks, this isn't even necessarily specific to Mayfield, who, by the way, huge Baker Mayfield fan. In the limited time he was here in LA, I fell in love with the guy. I think he's super fun to watch. Is make quarterbacks make quick decisions with pressure in their face. That's something that the Rams have been very good at getting pressure up the middle. So I think if they can do that, that's going to mitigate some of the problems they may have in the back end of the defense with Quentin Lake being on IR for a period of time. I think that's the number one priority for them on that side.
Yeah, and for the Bucks, I mean, it's pretty simple. This is a copy-paste game plan for the Bills game last week. So offensively, you have to run the ball effectively. And you have to lean on those guys to keep the chains moving. You cannot have them knocked back for 3 or 4 yard losses. You dial up Tucker, you dial up Rashad. Hopefully Bucky is back, but you have to pound the rock. Rashad White, even though he doesn't have the great stats, he doesn't have those huge explosive games like we just saw from Tucker. He has been unbelievable this year at taking these huge losses and turning them into either no gain or 1 or 2 yards. So he's taking these negatives and turning them into positives. I would just wish that he could get going forward a little bit sooner than when he's wrapped up 3 yards behind the backfield. But I will say that the offensive line got a huge confidence boost from the way that they not only protected Baker last week. There was one sack that they allowed. It was at the very end of the game. He was holding onto the ball, trying to get a deep shot. So that one really wasn't even on the line. But the way that they were able to clear paths for the running backs, you have to build on that. You have to keep those long drives going with the run game, not only just to control the tempo, but also to keep a dangerous Rams offense on the sideline. And one other quick note about the offensive line, guard Ben Bredesen was practicing on Thursday. Don't know his status. He missed last week because of a hamstring injury. But if he is able to go, if he tests that hamstring out on Thursday, tests it out on Friday, and he's good to go, that's another really big boost for an offensive line that has seen 7 different starting combinations in 10 games.
Yeah, that's a lot. The Rams are going to play without their right tackle, Rob Havenstein. He's gone for a little bit. Now, Warren McClendon had filled in for him earlier this season, and the fact that we didn't talk much about Warren McClendon while he was playing, I think is a very good sign. That I think he slides back in there and does a pretty good job. The other part that I'm a little interested in from the Rams from an offensive side too is, do they go back to more of that 12 and 13 personnel? Like Sean McVay lived in 11 for basically the first 9 years of his career, 8 years of his career. This year, it's been a little bit different, and they've done a lot of 12, a lot of 13. They didn't do a ton of it against Seattle. I'm curious if they go back to it against Tampa on Sunday night. But, like we mentioned at the top, Tyler Higbee, also one of those players that was placed on IR for a little while, but they still have Davis Allen. You still have the rookie Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, who when he comes in, he's a really interesting one because, man, it feels like he's open every time he comes in, but it also, every time he comes in, it means they're probably going to throw the ball. So it's a little bit of a tell. So I'm really interested to see how they set up with their tight ends again, because that's a new weapon in the McVay arsenal.
Yeah, and the Bucs struggled against the tight end position early in the season. They've really been able to get it together over the course of the last month and a half against tight ends. It's the running backs out of the backfield catching the ball that have been a real problem that has not gotten any better. In fact, it's only gotten worse. So I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on that. But the other key for the Bucs is, I go back to last week against the Bills. You have to win the turnover battle, and you have to win the field position battle. The Bucs did not do the latter against the Bills. Josh Allen consistently had short fields to work with. If you do that against the Rams, against this offense, the results are going to be even worse than they were against the Bills. The turnovers the Bucs can do. It may not be interceptions, but the Rams have turned the ball over this season. I mentioned Stafford has put the ball on the ground, but the Rams as a whole have 8 turnovers this season. They're 1 ahead of Tampa in turnover differential with a +10, because over this 5-game win streak, they had those 11 takeaways on defense. You have Kyron Williams with 2 fumbles. Puka has a fumble. Stafford has lost 3 fumbles. So an opportunistic defense like the Bucs have, they may give up explosive plays as of late, but they've been outstanding in taking the ball away. They're doing it in bunches. From there, you have to capitalize. They did not do that well enough last week. You got an interception to set up 1st and goal on the Bills' opening drive of the game. You settle for a field goal. You get another interception. You punt the ball away. You get a fumble recovery. That led to a touchdown. But you get 3 takeaways and only score 10 points. That's not going to cut it in Los Angeles against this Rams team. So you have to be able to capitalize on those opportunities, because they're going to be far and few between, but it can swing the game.
Yeah, the Rams won last week simply because they didn't, Puka had the 1 fumble like you mentioned, but Sam Darnold gave him 4 picks. And now, if he throws 1 fewer and one of the interceptions, similar to what you mentioned, was in their own end. It gave the Rams a very short field. Colby Parkinson scored the touchdown that was the difference maker right there. The Rams have been pretty good as far as turnovers go, but this is the NFL. One play here or there where you put the ball on the ground or throw it to the wrong guy, and that's it. I expect this to be a very close game. I expect this to be, this is where I will usually say it could come down to a kick, not for the Rams because they don't kick anymore, but metaphorically speaking, at least I think this could come down to a kick.
James is over at Locked On Bucks. Travis is over at Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Monday Night Football, Carolina Panthers, San Francisco 49ers. Two teams that I think are surprising some people this season. Brock Purdy returned for San Francisco in week 11. Meanwhile, the Panthers, I mean, they just keep looking better and better to me. So Julian Council of Locked On Panthers and Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers talk about which of these underrated teams will pick up a win.
All right, let's wrap up this crossover for week 12. Brian Peacock here of Locked On 49ers with Julian Council of Locked On Panthers. And I called it a Christian McCaffrey revenge game, Julian. I don't think there's any hard feelings at all from Christian McCaffrey here. And it wasn't like he was necessarily pushed out. But he has been phenomenal. And we talked about, smart running back play. And it's really amazing to watch him, even with the efficiency not there. And the 49ers really just haven't been running the ball that well. But he's been able to handle the workload because it's been all Christian McCaffrey with all the other injuries on the 49ers with that wide receiver and at quarterback. They've leaned on Christian McCaffrey, and he's been up to the challenge and taken that workload, even if it's high volume and kind of low efficiency in the run game, but his ability to work in the pass game as well. And you start talking about linebackers and the blender that Kyle Shanahan can put opposing linebackers in, whether it's Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield, thrown over the middle of the field to two wide receivers, and of course George Kittle as well. And so I have a feeling that's where this game might be won or lost in week 12, is that middle of the football field.
Yeah, and I was looking at some of CMC's numbers so far this year over on True Media, the way that they had things qualified for running backs. His 2.5 yards after contact, or 36 out of 42 qualifying backs, which I was really surprised to see that. And even looking deeper, if you just want to toggle it and have running backs who have at least 100 carries so far this season, his EPA per rush is 23rd out of 29 backs. Now, what's important, though, as you mentioned, him in the pass game, fourth among running backs in EPA per target, but only 19th in success rate on the ground so far this season. So he's still a stud. I'm not going to really look at those numbers and think that, Christian McCaffrey can't go out there and have an awesome day against Carolina, have 100 on the ground, 100 through the air. I'm not going to say that at all. But it's very interesting to see just how obviously he's utilized a ton in that Shanahan offense. And honestly, when you look at him leaving Carolina to go there, he's with a far better offensive play caller than what he had in Carolina. Now, Joe Brady was here for a period of time I think the whole time CMC was here in Carolina, or at least the whole time Brady was in Carolina, CMC was here as well with him he had his play caller for like a year and a half with Joe Brady. That's what I'm trying to say. But Brady wasn't what he is now in Buffalo, of course, because he didn't have Josh Allen at his disposal at that point in time. So it is interesting the way that's played out. Like, I was looking back at it because I try to track all these trades that are made. Now, Scott Fitter is no longer the general manager here, but two of the picks that they got back from San Francisco, they used to trade up to get a player in DJ Johnson out of Oregon, who is a 24-year-old edge rushing prospect. The guy's no longer on the team, and he got cut a couple of weeks ago after that game against the Patriots here in Carolina. So I was just like, man, you trade away CMC to go get a guy who was a project, and he didn't even make it through 3 full seasons with the team. So yeah, didn't really, but they used one of those picks though to get up to Chicago, that second round pick. They did use that in the Bryce Young trade, which at least last week worked. So we'll see at the end of the day if that works out for them more than DJ Johnson did.
It's all on the shoulders of Bryce Young, man. He's got the franchise on his shoulders right now. So clearly, up front's going to be important on defense to stop the run game. But I think we have to talk about the elephant in the room here, which is the lack of pass rush these two defenses have provided. The 49ers are 32nd, I believe, in sack rate in the NFL and 31st in pressure rate. And the team that's 32nd is the Carolina Panthers.
Yep, so sure are.
Bryce Young and Brock Purdy might have a nice day and have one of those games where their uniforms all clean when they walk off the field and be able to operate without a lot of pressure. And so, whichever team can kind of create something and get after the opposing quarterback is going to be huge. And it's funny that you mentioned DJ Johnson. He's not even on the team. It's like at the position that they need players at the most, right?
Exactly. But they went out and drafted 2 guys on day 2 of the draft back in April, and Nick Scorton, who's really coming to his own recently. And then even Prince Umamielen, who hasn't necessarily got there the last couple of weeks. He's been kind of banged up, but I think those 2 guys, especially on what is now becoming a playoff push at the end of the season, if Carolina is going to make it there, it's not just going to be Bryce Young really starting to explode in the passing game, but you got to find a way to disrupt guys like Brock Purdy, like I mean, we know, especially Sam Darnold, you get that guy going and we can see those turnovers.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Matthew Stafford, you can't let him sit back there and pick you apart. Baker Mayfield as well. So there's a lot of really talented quarterbacks going to be playing in the last month and a half of the season, where if they're going to continue to have the worst pressure percentage, which I think is at like 27.5% on dropbacks this year, that's just not a formula to be a winning football team. It's kind of crazy. You're already 6-5 anyways, despite that being an issue this year and really been an issue the last couple of years for the Panthers. And that leads to turnovers too, Brian. And I looked at these two teams, the Panthers and San Francisco have 15 turnovers this year. Niners have a -5 turnover margin, Carolina -4. Panthers are 4-0 this season when it win the turnover battle. And that's something you can talk about pretty much every single week, but especially looking at these teams, how they've had that proclivity to turn ball over. That's something I'm looking at, especially on Monday night as well.
Yeah, the 49ers got a couple of interceptions last week. They had gone almost an entire calendar year without picking a ball off. And so turnovers has been a problem as far as takeaways for the 49ers, especially in the interception department. And a lot of that tied into, some pressure and some of those things as well. So it's going to be a fun one here. How do you see this thing going on Monday night, Julian? Do you have a prediction for us?
Well, the Panthers have covered the spread in 7 other games so far this year. That's more than anybody else in the NFL. So I would be telling people, which I don't think I would ever have wanted to tell people up until this point in time and finding out this information earlier this week, bet on Carolina to cover the spread because they're covering it so far 7 out of 11 times. And they've won as underdogs outright 6 times so far this season. So, I mean, Vegas is getting this wrong a lot, guys.
Yeah. Not a lot of believers is what that's. People don't want to put their money down on the Carolina Panthers this year.
No, they don't. I don't know. I think of the games remaining, this is one of their easier matchups. Now, New Orleans should be the other one. Should be. They already lost to that team, but certainly I would think that they're going to have their attention, which the Panthers players admitted that they didn't have the kind of focus they needed to have heading that game against the Saints a couple weeks ago. So other than the Saints game, this to me is probably their easiest remaining game. I don't think they can beat the Rams. I think the Rams are going to win the Super Bowl. The Bucs, they can certainly beat them as a divisional opponent. I don't know if they can score with them. Now, they showed last week they can. And then Seattle, that could work out in their favor because it's week 17 and Sam Darnold playing in a pressure pack game doesn't really go well from recent history. So I could see it going Carolina's way. But hard for me to, I don't really do picks, but hard for me to feel very confident in their ability to go on the road on Monday night in prime time and to actually show out and show the rest of the NFL world, it's like, hey guys, take us seriously. We just went to the Bay and won this game. So I can see it happening. Vegas keeps betting against them and they keep covering and they've won outright 6 times. So it sounds like the Panthers got a great shot.
Yeah, 49ers win, Panthers cover, I feel like is kind of a place where I feel like this game could go. I will say this, it feels like it's more important for the Panthers than the 49ers, just because I think the Panthers can't get to a place because there's so many teams in the NFC that 6-6 versus 7-5 is such a big difference, even though it's not that big of a difference. And the Panthers aren't that far off from the division right now either.
They're a half game back. And that's the thing, like, what is more important to them? I think, I don't think they can get in as a wild card. I don't think that's going to happen. I think their best hope is that Tampa comes back to them and they finish 9-8. And that would require them to sweep Tampa, beat New Orleans at the very least. That's 3 more wins for them. Getting that 10th win and then being positioned for 10-7, where they could still be trying to win a division that way, or get that extra wild card spot in the NFC South, that would likely require winning this game, especially either this one or Seattle. Again, I don't think the Rams game next Sunday is really a feasible one to think you're going to win. Maybe they do because it's cross country. I don't see that happening. So yeah, it's more important for Carolina if they want to get the wild card. But if they can win the division, I think it's still possible at 9-8 as long as you sweep Tampa later on next month.
You can find Brian over at Locked On 49ers. You can find Julian over at Locked On Panthers, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's all I have for you here today on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy your football, enjoy your weekend, and of course, enjoy your Sunday. And we'll be back here with Week 13's action, which has a ton of great matchups. So be sure you stay tuned for everything we have in store on Locked On Podcast Network, and we'll see you right back here soon on the Ultimate NFL Pregame Show.